You're over 40, still fighting the same battles in silence. The unfinished projects, scattered thoughts, shame that whispers. You should have had it together by now. But here's the truth. You don't need more discipline. You just need a different kind of direction. You're not broken. You're built different. And for 7 days, from November 3rd to November 9th, you're going to prove it. This isn't just motivation. This is reclamation. 90 minutes a day to stop hiding behind the mask. Just put it away forever and walk away a different man. The Reclaim Your Voice Challenge. Your next level doesn't come from doing more. It comes from finally being more of you. Visit youradhdguy.com for more information. It's time for that change you've been waiting for.
Because what you're talking about sounds like it's depression. A lot of times depression masks other emotions that you may be feeling underneath. So, processing and figuring out what those other emotions are. And a lot of times, depression can mask itself as repressed anger. So, if and a lot of times that occurs because you don't feel like you have a voice. So, like you may have things that have happened that you weren't expecting and you didn't feel safe, like you could express what you were feeling at that moment.
This is Don't Mind Me, I Just Have ADHD. But let's be real. ADHD doesn't just mean forgetfulness or fidgeting. It's meant being labeled, masking, performing just to survive in a system that wasn't designed with us in mind. The podcast isn't about fixing you. It's about unlearning the shame you were handed down. Here we talk about ADHD, trauma, addiction, depression, healing, identity. All the messy things that make us human in our life and work. And we do it with fierce kindness. I'm Ron Sowers, your ADHD guy. And if you've ever felt like you had to earn your worth, if you ever struggled to slow down, speak up, or show up without a mask, welcome. You're not too much. You were never broken. And now you're waking up. Let's remember who we are together. I want to help you see what you were always meant to be. In this episode, I sit down with Elisha Lee, a licensed Christian counselor, survivor of domestic violence, and a fierce advocate for trauma-informed care, to explore what it means to reclaim your voice after years of silence. Elisha shares her deeply personal journey through trauma around ADHD and the invisible wounds many of us carry. We speak candidly about depression as a mask for repressed anger, about how society cages our emotions, and how people with ADHD, often misunderstood, are some of the most creative, intuitive, and adaptive minds among us. We uncover how visualization can be a key to breaking free, how a workout routine can anchor healing, and how recovery is not just a process. It's a rebellion against the lie that you are not enough. This episode is a call to every soul who has ever felt trapped, voiceless, or overwhelmed by chaos in their mind. You are not broken, and with the right tools, community, and compassion, you can find your way out. So I urge you, listen closely, reflect deeply, and stay with us to the very end because the first step towards freedom is believing that healing is possible. Hey, this is Ron here, and I'm here with Elisha Lee, who is a restore. You're a coach.
Licensed counselor who is also the owner of Restoring You Christian Counseling, a mental health practice in the state of Maryland.
Nice, definitely good old Maryland.
Right, exactly in the DMV area. Right.
Cool. Well, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here. And yeah, I was just wondering what got you into like the space that you're in.
Well, it was all part of my own healing journey to kind of get into a place of wellness and help people with their own heart wounds. And that's my own full circle moment. A lot of times when you're recovering or over in the process of overcoming some things, you want to help others too. So this is my way of doing that as well.
Awesome. That's that healing is so important.
Man,
Um,
is it right?
yeah, definitely. Do you have you worked with individuals that have ADHD or is as ADHD what his role is like
Oh
in
yeah. Yes, I have. I have worked with individuals who have had ADHD. I really love working with people who, because I think they're geniuses to a degree.
yeah.
There's a lot of famous people that have had ADHD that a lot of people don't know about. So I enjoy talking to them um, because they think outside the box, you know,
Hmm.
and I enjoy meeting people who think outside the box because it helps you to stretch also as well. So I enjoy that, which is why I
Awesome.
think we connected so well, Ron. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got ADHD. Definitely.
Right.
No, that's good. And we need more people that kind of see it that way, that the strength side of it. That these are people that are very creative. They have the the needs and wants just like anybody else.
Hmm.
But a lot of their strengths get overlooked because all the negative or the yeah, I'm getting a blank here. But
No, but it's okay. I get what you're saying. Like I think people who are under the umbrella of ADHD, they tend to be individuals who are extremely smart. They are extremely creative because they're able to think outside the box. They're able to quickly be flexible within situations that in the past may have been rigid. So if something appears to be rigid, what they tend to do is they tend to work around that so that they can go to that place with where they're trying to go. And it doesn't always make sense to everybody else, but I think that's okay. We're just I just think they're just kind of think differently and they're wired differently. And I think that's okay. The world would be the boring place if we were all the same, you know? So
yeah,
that's how
definitely.
I see
And
it.
I'm glad you see it that way because that's the kind of mission that I'm on is just to give people this understanding that ADHD is here. It's not going anywhere. But it's not a problem as well.
Hmm.
It's like coming from that deficit system, which I think is harmful for everybody because if you don't fit inside this certain box or you don't, meet this standard or it's going to you're not as good of a person or you're not, which it totally misses the mark.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is why it's so important to really kind of just focus on what's some, what meeting people where they are,
Yeah.
and not try to put them into a place where they would normally not fit, and then tell them that something's wrong with you or something is off with you because you don't fit. That's not conducive, you know. That doesn't fit the bill. So I think it's really cool that you're doing the show and just trying to normalize at least this piece of around that's around that, because it's I mean, I think they're cool people, you know. They tend to
Yeah.
excel, especially like when it comes to driven types of things, like in sales environments, they tend to excel and things of that nature because they do think outside the box, you know. So
Yeah. Plus, living as somebody with, a neurodivergency period is just, life is much harder and you have to be more perseverant. You have to persevere more and be more resilient. So it makes sense, like, why, like sales and other outside the box type of um, jobs or professions, would actually benefit those individuals. So
yeah,
let's
go ahead.
talk a little bit more about your like your healing. What was it that um you had to heal from
Well,
that brought you?
I am a survivor of this isn't something we talked about before, but I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I was in a
Mm,
marriage where there was domestic violence within the marriage, and I was able to get out of that situation and also
that's
um,
good.
protect my children and come out of that for and bring them out of that and the ripple effects that came from that. And so I healed from the grooming that took place to even put myself in that situation. From my younger years, I was healing from, literally being in that situation. And then
Yeah.
the trauma of what happened from that. And then also, too, helping my sons process what happened as little children, and helping them to get a better place in their healing as well. So it took a while. And then the journey pretty much looked like most people's journey. I was in support groups. I did go, to therapy for different counseling. I read self help books. I was intentional about maybe my community, and maybe some people who didn't
Hmm.
mean me well, they were shed, and then the people who met me well, they were joining in my circle. And that's kind of like how it happened for me. And as I continued to move around in my healing journey, um, I became more and more interested in human behavior and recognizing that to some size and to some degree, everybody's got something,
Yeah,
that they're trying to work through and overcome. And I figured that that was something I wanted to do as a career. After a while, you get tired of just doing a job, and then you want to do something that brings you purpose. And so this brought me purpose, and that's how I got going into this area. So,
that's awesome. And I'm sure that there's still things that you're healing from, and thank you for being so open about that. I'm sure that that was incredibly difficult to do. Um, but you push through it, and that takes a lot of courage and strength. Um,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I lost everything twice. You
wow.
know, I went through 2 seasons where I lost everything twice. But the thing is that I believe I'm a much better person or version of myself than I was before. Although those incidences have changed me dramatically, um, I don't regret the journey that it brought me in, because there was beauty within that trauma, within those traumas that bring me into a better version of myself. And my sons are doing well overall. Like they still, they're sons, so they're doing well.
That's awesome.
I'm in an area where, so we're all in a better place. But if I hadn't done the work around that, then I would have stayed. Then it wouldn't have been good. For me, I honestly believe if I would have stayed in that situation, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the life-changing events at the time, at least in my experience, have been, completely devastating. And, you know, um, I thought it was like the end of the world in a way
Mm-hmm.
for me, but it actually, looking back, it was the best thing to happen. Um, and I'm sure with your healing process, it took a lot of communication, especially with your sons. Like, you
Right.
know,
And they were
um,
little too, so even kind of like knowing what to say and how to say it too, so they could understand, you
yeah,
know, was also interesting as well.
yeah, because I'm actually doing some exploring on my own about like, there's this sadness that I have from years of, especially as a man, like it's just saying that word, like, oh, I'm sad, I'm feeling sad right now. Like that's not something that's a normal thing um to allow myself to feel, because it's either I have to be happy or I have to get away from this emotion. But
Hmm.
it's okay. Like if something happens, you know um in my life that brings up that sadness, because it's a weight. It's a weight
Right.
that has been pushed down and pushed down and pushed down, and it covers up other emotions that are
Hmm.
just buried there. Um, and really exploring those has been, it's been raw, but it's also been, freeing, and I feel like lighter, like I'm carrying less baggage, which is awesome.
I think that depression, because what you're talking about sounds like it's depression. A
Hmm.
lot of times, depression masks other emotions that you may be feeling underneath. So, processing and figuring out what those other emotions are. And a lot of times, depression can mask itself as repressed anger.
Hmm.
So, you know, if and a lot of times that occurs because you don't feel like you have a voice.
Yeah.
So, like you may have that have happened that you weren't expecting and you didn't feel safe, like you could express what you were feeling at that moment. So a lot of times that brings up those feelings of anger, but you can't express it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that could be. So it's good that you're taking out the time to evaluate and say, why am I feeling this sadness? Because if you ignore it, it's only going to deepen.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, another thing that I've been battling as well is like, the initial or reaction to be like, oh, we need to get away from this and we need to change this because
Hmm.
this is bad. You don't want to feel this. Um, and it's been very, eye opening, because it goes back to like, okay, why am I feeling it? I always like to use curiosity when it comes to feeling these deeper emotions, like if I'm angry about something or upset about something, like I like to explore, like, well, is this something that I need to communicate about? Was it really that important? And how do I go about making that communication once I get to that point of understanding? And sometimes I got to just run it by somebody else that I trust in order to be
Right.
like, to get a better answer. Because I feel like, a lot of us hold in um, these situations, like, especially when it comes to strong emotions, because we don't think that, it shows we're weak, or or we shouldn't be feeling this, so I can't admit that I'm feeling it. So you're stuck in this isolation of like feeling these strong feelings with nowhere to go with it, with nothing to do. And once I've been able to communicate those, um, the solution's often in that communication, because you never know
Hmm.
what that person's like insight is going to be in that situation, that can really help, or even just getting it out, um, and releasing that, like it's like a cage that
Right.
a lot of us are stuck in.
That's a great analogy. I love that. It's like a cage. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
do you work with your clients on an emotional level, or like how does that?
Oh, absolutely. And as you were talking, I'll just give some tips and some things people can do. Because if you're feeling like your emotions are in a cage, that's something that that could be also be part of your repressed anger,
Yeah.
right? And so sometimes the anger can be a wall and you can't get through it to kind of figure out what's behind it regarding those emotions. So you kind of need a way to, you do need, like, it's good that you have your community, but you also
Hmm.
want to be careful that you're not trauma dumping on them too, you know?
Yeah.
So I often suggest to people, like, have some sort of a workout routine because you're getting that out of your system. And
Hmm.
what's happening is because you're expressing your anger, it's giving you an outlet. So whether it be, doing walking, running, something that you are exercising in some sort of an aerobic activity. And
Yeah.
also weights can help too as well, you know, in order to build. Something else you could also do is the creative space. Like we had talked about how neurodivergent people, a lot of times, they
Hmm.
are very creative. So within that creative space, maybe you can use that as a way to, as a means of exploring how you may be feeling as well, letting that out, using that outlet as well. I know that for me, I am a writer. And
Yeah.
so I tend to like do things in the writing space so that but some people, maybe you're into drawing or you're into painting, but whatever that is, allow what you're feeling to show on the canvas of what your creative space is. So those are just a couple ideas that you could do, you know,
Mm.
to, to kind of express that. I know a lot of people hate journaling. So I also, and I know it might be for some people who are dealing with, I hate using the word dealing, but who have been diagnosed with ADHD, it can be challenging to do that.
Hmm.
But you can also like do a vocal recording of like um, do like a vocal log of maybe how you're doing and checking yourself and just kind of talking about how your feelings are at that moment too, as far as having an outlet as well. But we want, and community is extremely important too, as you had mentioned as well. I'm glad that you have people, that can support you also. But you want to kind of mix it up a little bit so that it doesn't feel overwhelming for the people with who you have in your community as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely, some great suggestions to do. And, journaling is, yeah, I definitely had to warm up to that.
hmm,
And and I don't do it as often as, I would like, just because of my schedule. And I get
I
like
get it.
being
Right.
ADHD is like, if it's new, then it's easier. But once it gets kind of monotonous, then it's like it gets so much harder to continue that practice, even if it's brought good results.
Hmm.
Um, do you have any like suggestions for, that type of, like
Well, there's
switching it
all
up?
kinds of ways to journal. Like there's more than one way to journal. So
Okay.
you can do your journal through writings. You can do like one word journals, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, that's just like, expressing how you're feeling, during certain parts of the day. Um, there's different ways. And then, as I mentioned before, I have clients where I know they're not writers, like they're just not into that. But because we're all different, and that's okay. Not
Yeah.
like you don't have to be a writer to journal. You know, you can also be someone who's recording what you're feeling and having a log around that. And having that audio recording as well. Then you can like put it on your phone and talk about
Mm-hmm.
how you're feeling about, and that can be your journal. So, and sometimes saying it out loud versus writing it down, hearing yourself say something, you're like, it helps to process it as well. So
Yeah.
the,
No, I like that.
like the idea of writing it down, what it does is when you write things down, it forces you to slow down and kind of process what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what you're doing when you express it, and it gives you a release as well. So,
Yeah, it definitely, and I've read, books on the science of it. Like, it actually, like when you're, extremely emotional,
hmm
that side of the brain actually takes over because you need it to protect yourself, at least when we were created, like because you needed to be able to react out of fear or whatever, because there was threats around you and
right.
that needed to take over. So it's going to always override the brain. But if you
hmm
start to write down things like that actually forces you to use the more logical, less emotional side of your brain. So it makes sense on a science level and also in practice. So speaking of writing, you actually have, you're an author of two books.
Right.
One's an adult coloring book on mindfulness. Like,
hmm
okay, like tell me how that works.
Well, uh, people don't slow down. So
Okay.
what coloring forces you to slow down, which is why I mentioned, as well when doing journaling you can draw, you know,
Hmm.
and let that be your journaling as well. But that was part of it, and the topics around it are extending yourself, forgiveness and grace around that. So it's called
Yeah.
Biblical Affirmations of Forgiveness and Grace in Adult Coloring Book to Peace and Restoration. So
Wow.
all of the messages in it are tied around affirmations around restoration and peace, and it
Hmm.
forces you to sit down and just kind of let things soak in that are good, as you're coloring. And then the other book I wrote is the Mental Health Handbook Strategies for Self Care for Resilience. And that pretty much is the coping plan, or a coping plan that you could create for those of you who are experiencing anxiety. And the thing about coping plans is they can be fluid. So you
Hmm.
can pick out some things that will work for you and then try it as you are moving forward in your healing journey. So, like, those are the two books that I've written.
That's awesome. Those are definitely useful tools. Especially for, ADHD minds, like, because we tend to be drawn towards like the shiny, more creative things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, especially like, a lot of people don't understand that there's a therapeutic value in drawing or painting or coloring.
Mm-hmm.
You can also express those emotions and they don't, you don't have to, you know, go out and create an art gallery for it. It's just there as another form of, like say journaling, it's just more in a creative way. So you talked about coping mechanisms like or strategies. What would be like an example of like how one would use that book or how you've helped somebody develop
Well,
that?
okay, so I often tell people I have actually this had a lot of success with those who are neurodivergent on the topic of visualization. You
Hmm.
know, you seeing yourself, um, looking at where you want to be, where you're going, and seeing yourself there, and then doing what's necessary to merge where you are to where you want to be. And
Yeah.
then what's really cool is seeing how someone who is um, been diagnosed with ADHD, how they think outside the box to get to where they want to be. And it might not look like
Hmm.
how everyone else looks, but that's okay because it's still getting them to where they want to be. So I use the tool of visualization quite a bit. Um, Deep breathing, I think, is very important as well to kind of slow yourself down, especially in spaces where you kind of have to slow down, even though you don't want to. Those
Yeah.
kinds of things. That I found that to be helpful because it also helps to measure your responses to situations as well. Just doing that intentional pause, you know, as well as uh, exercising um, your giving yourself permission to not engage in conversations that don't mean you well, you know,
Yeah.
and how to gracefully exit from that or take part in some of the difficult conversations. So it's a combination of all those things that are in that book.
No,
So
that's awesome because it's like
mhm.
that there's definitely some conversations, it's hard to, gracefully exit. And I feel like a lot of people have that
Right.
issue. Um, I've never had that problem. I was like always looking for the exit, being an introvert, but now I'm more along the lines of like, okay, um, how can I sit with this person, especially if this is something that they need,
Right.
to vent that stress. I may not,
Right.
and, even if they're not necessarily listening, like understanding the core of who they are.
Mhm.
Um, like some people have, are bipolar and understanding like that, in 1 minute they could be the greatest person to be around, and the next minute they could just, be someone else. And that can flip very easily. So understanding that about them and being like, oh, well, okay, he's changed or she's changed. Like this is probably something happened to trigger that.
Mhm.
Um, let me not be as, judgmental or, let me remember them as like the best version of them, and
Right.
try to help them
Exactly.
get through it.
Exactly.
It's been, eye opening, and I um I definitely like that workout routine that you
Mhm.
talked about, because the other thing that you talked about was that breathing.
Mhm.
And the breathing, like for me, has come over time. But how do you get people to really like get into that and create a routine out of that, especially if, breathing can be something for somebody with ADHD, especially trying to slow
Mhm.
down can be, like asking them to, sit down to an SAT exam.
So I kind of think that um, a lot of times what you do is what people are what I try to work with people to do is to pay attention to your body.
Hmm.
So if you're starting to feel like, um, for example, like your shoulders are getting tense, or if you're starting to feel like maybe you're getting sweaty palms or tightness in your chest, before it getting to that space, start the deep breathing. And you can do deep breathing anywhere or in any situation. You
Mm.
don't necessarily have to be at a situation of pause. The purpose of it is to help you get yourself grounded and to also help you refocus on what's happening around you. Because because a lot of times those who are neurodivergent, they may be at a 10 and everyone else around them might be at a 7.
Yeah.
And so in order to kind of help them to be able to flow within that space so that they're not misunderstood, sometimes paying attention to that can be a form of, they can start feeling anxious because they're realizing that. So doing the deep breathing can help with getting yourself grounded and better pacing yourself so that people are actually hearing what you have to say. So, there's a difference
Hmm.
between, like, I can say anything, but are people really hearing what I have to say?
Yeah.
So that becomes the situation of, do I want the people around me to hear what it is I am saying, and then exercising that accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, and I still have, moments where, if like I'm at work and sometimes it just go like my brain's like this needs to get done and that needs to get done and all this stuff needs to get done like right now and like um I when I notice myself in those situations like I tend to breathe and ask that question, what is the rush?
Right.
What is the point of doing this? Like you're tired, you're awesome. Um, and yeah, like I just need to just breathe and get myself recentered. Um, yeah.
Something that I find pretty amazing about you, Ron, is that, um, if I can just give you some flowers, is I think that you're someone that, you know, you give, and you're giving back. You're trying to normalize what others might view as something that's not normal.
Yeah.
When you're letting it be known that this is not a unique thing, and that what I really like is your kindness circle. You know,
Hmm.
and
Thank
so
you.
one of the things I would like to extend, to everyone too, with the audience, is make sure you're taking time to be kind to yourself as well, because sometimes we can be so hard on ourselves,
Yeah.
like, especially those who are where the world is slower than how you move. So, just take some time to give yourself some grace and show some kindness to yourself, because you're not, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything wrong with that person. You're just different. And I think that's okay, you know. And I don't think different is a bad thing. I think different is a good thing. So,
Yeah. And I appreciate your kind words, man. Like they they really hit home for me, Alicia. And yeah, it's about, showing up in a way for yourself because I feel like our diversity is our strength as a human race.
hmm hmm
It's when, you can even look back in history and some of the best, most um like times of evolution was when we got together as from different people in one
hmm
place and got those ideas. Um, because there's always a new problem. There's always something that needs to be, looked at deeper. And when we're like when we show up with kindness, and I'm glad that you talked about that, because it's often misinterpreted as a weakness,
it's really not.
but you think about it as like, yeah, you've been kind to somebody in the past, in order to continue to be kind. after those negative, reactions to that. It takes courage because I'll tell you, like every day I'm not waking up like, how can I be kind today? Sometimes like just being kind to yourself, or a lot of times just being kind to yourself is the only way, the best way that you can show up for other people. You know,
Right.
like, like I said, like when I say I'm sad, I'm feeling sad and admit that to myself and allow myself to process that emotion,
Right.
and let it flow. I'm actually being kind to myself
Mm-hmm.
so that I can not hold on to that heaviness that's going to start to erode at who I am, and I won't be able to show up because I'm spending so much energy and time trying to ignore this and force it back down so I can be this positive. Nobody's positive all the time. Like that's, and I feel like in this culture, that's kind of taking away from our humanity as as
Right.
as people because we're not showing up as our authentic self. We're showing up as as somebody that we believe the world needs to see,
Mm-hmm.
and we're afraid to show, as people, but especially as men to show like our vulnerability. And we're at a time where it's like you have this openness and this platform that's just not being utilized in the way that I see it can be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that it brings a balance to some of the, because there's so much negativity out there right now. So it helps to bring a
Yeah.
balance to what's happening there. So, you know, um, it feels like in a lot of ways, like with restoring you, for example, with the practice and everything that the practice is doing, you're doing the same thing, and which I think is amazing, which is why we're going to be doing some collabs together. I know you're going to be on my podcast in a couple
Yeah,
of
it's
weeks. I'm
awesome.
excited about that. So, yeah,
Yeah, me too. So, I know we're short on time here, so like, and it would be lovely to be able to continue this conversation, and we will on your podcast. So, how can people reach out to you if they would like to learn more or
oh,
work with you?
sure. So they can check out the website at www www.restoringyou You can also check out the podcast on it's called Elisha's Space. And it's on all the major platforms as well, just to kind of get resources that's out there in the community, or check out the books that we had mentioned, and they're listed on Amazon. So all kinds of ways people can reach out to me. Phone number, if you want to call, is 443-860-6870. I will be starting a marriage counseling group
Nice.
mid-September if people of if people are interested in that as well. So those are some things that's how you can contact me, and that's something upcoming that's coming. So yeah.
Well,
So
awesome. And I hope the viewers get something out of it, and this helps bring more people that need that specific type of help. Um,
yeah.
again, it's been, such a pleasure, and thank you for showing up and, really giving that appreciation to what, because we need each other to continue
Absolutely.
to support, because this isn't just somebody doing one thing by themselves. We got to do this work as a community in order to
Absolutely.
grow that.
Absolutely. So audience, I want to thank you guys for having me with having me. Thank you so much, Ron, for the invitation. It's amazing. I'm looking forward to us doing our part 2 of our conversation. So I just want to thank you guys. I'm so thankful that I get to be with y'all today.
Yep. Stay tuned for that. And thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. See you guys later.
Bye. So, what if the voice you've been waiting to hear was your own? Elisha reminded us today that healing doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's coloring a page while breathing out shame and breathing in grace. And if this episode stirred something in you, don't just sit with it, act on it. You can find Elisha and all her incredible resources at www.restoringyourchristiancounseling.com. Her podcast, Elisha's Space, is filled with wisdom, compassion, and the kind of conversations that make you feel less alone. And if you're looking for something tangible to hold on to, check out her books. Mindfulness, Biblical Affirmations of Forgiveness and Grace, an adult coloring journey to peace and restoration, and the Mental Health Handbook, Strategies for Self-Care and Resilience. And if you're in need of support right now, Elisha is just a phone call away at 443-860-6870. All the links will be in the show notes. And hey, if you've been needing a reset, I've got something for you too. Download my self-discovery journal. It's packed with guided prompts, rituals, and practices to help you come home to yourself. It's my gift to you. Find that at youradhdguy.com. Or if you just need to slow down and breathe, check out my Pause and Peace calming pet coloring book for adults with ADHD, because sometimes healing looks like letting your nervous system off the hook, one paw at a time. Again, the links will be in the show notes. And now, before I let you go, let's get ready for what's coming next. Because next week, I sit down with Eric Jennings, soccer coach and host of World XP podcast. We continue the conversation we started on his show, diving into how soccer and ADHD share more than you might think. Movement, mindset, momentum, and how the pitch might just be the perfect mirror for the ADHD brain. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. Until then, be kind to the parts of you still healing. They're not broken, they're becoming. And as always, may the source be with you.